Hey, good morning. Thank you for showing up so early. So I'm Brian, and this is a presentation about how we improved out-of-hours on-call at Intercom, which is where I work. So chances are where you work also possibly needs their on-call improved too. So hopefully this presentation will provide some inspiration and ways of thinking about how to improve on-call. First of all, how many people are on-call right now? Any hands up? Cool. So like if you get paged, we could help out. That would be like a pretty cool conference talk where we just like sit around, wait for someone to get paged and learn about each other's systems, be like some sort of on-call support group. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, my thing is not working. So I'm going to start off by generally talking about out-of-hours on-call before talking about the problems that we wanted to solve in Intercom. So on-call is amazing. It's wonderful, and I love doing it. It's like the perfect storm of ownership and responsibility, technical challenges, a way to like learn about the systems that your company builds and the stuff that your customers actually use. It like connects you to your technical stack and like your customers and any customer pain. If like your customers can't use your software to do their job or your services, like when you're on call, you can actually do something about it and fix it. So that's just great. So being responsible for the delivery of value to your customers is pretty thrilling. It's very satisfying to get paid for something or find something that's broken and fix it and make customers feel happier. So, and having worked in a bunch of fast-growing companies, it's also where like you'll find early warning signs of problems, like systems or processes that aren't scaling. So this information is like very difficult to find out using other ways. So often you're not just fixing the problem to hand, but like you're getting really good signal for like what to do next and what features to improve or like what work to prioritize. Also, like before I joined Intercom, I worked in Amazon.com, and through like my interest in problem solving and troubleshooting, I ended up becoming a call leader, which is a role in Amazon where you're responsible for managing like the fixing of any problem in Amazon, pretty much. And this role opened a lot of doors for me, and like it was very valuable in my career. So I think like on-call can be not just it's something that's significant, has significant benefits to your org and to your customers, but it can be I've got pretty good personal experience of it being good for my career too. But also at the same time, on-call is absolutely terrible. Out-of-hours on-call can make your life considerably worse than it was before you started doing out-of-hours on-call. Especially if the systems that your organization has is not paying attention to like the quality of the operation. So, fundamentally being woken up in the middle of the night is absolutely no fun. This alone causes personal, like physical and mental stress. I can still remember the exact ringtone of the first phone I had in Amazon that used to page me. And if it was to go off now, I'd probably jump. Personally speaking, I don't sleep very well when I'm on call as well, despite years of experience and probably having spent like a whole year of my last 10 years on call. I've got young children and I run every single day, but given all that, I still wake up the number of times when I'm on call in the middle of the night, just in case I missed a page. Every outage and alert is like a learning opportunity, which is great, and these are good things. But there are also like risks to like the work you were planning to do. They can get away of your commitments, and just can disrupt your day-to-day, both in the office, like professionally, as well as your personal life. And like following up on outages and being like disciplined during like business hours will cause like organizational stress. Your team will commit to have done a bunch of stuff, then something breaks and you have to do some other work to fix this, and that can be difficult to deal with if you don't have Slack built in to deal with this kind of stuff. So like your team may or may not meet your commitments depending on what happens when you're on call. This can be no fun. Also, like when you go on call, you can be suddenly very aware of any technical problem and organizational problems that your your company has. So, and this can become overwhelming because you get the impression that everything is on fire all of the time, and it seems like you can't make progress. It can seem like you can't make progress to fix these things. So if you have a team who are not paying attention to their services, or maybe ignored lessons learned from previous outages, or don't review their alarms and alerts, don't have processes to kind of follow up on these things, or maybe a service is going through rapid growth, or your customers are doing things you didn't expect, or you have implementation decisions that are difficult to change. There's basically a big long list of things that can cause systemic problems that result in pages that can be difficult to deal with. They're not just fixing, rebooting a server or failing over a database. You're dealing with systemic problems, and this stuff is difficult to deal with. So some of the times it's not obvious that when you're on call or after an on-call shift that any improvements can be made at all. That can be kind of depressing. So I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson about the history of on-call at Intercom. So this kind of frames the problem that we ended up having to solve. So Intercom is a software as a service startup. We do the vast majority of our R&D out of our Dublin office. And so Intercom's thing is like a business messenger. It's like one of those chat things in the bottom right-hand corner of a website. And chances are, if you had a good experience and actually liked using it, it was possibly Intercom that we were using. And Intercom has grown pretty rapidly over the last few years since I've joined. And as such, Intercom has grown, on-call also kind of grew organically. So we had a strong sense of ownership in Intercom, and teams running what they built. But when things were pretty small, it was just as the original founders or CTOs, the folks who built the first few things, they would go on call and just they cared a lot if stuff was broken. Over time, though, we grew more engineers. We ended up building a team of infrastructure team, which is largely systems engineers, but then we ended up in a situation where we had lots of engineers, lots of different teams, and lots of individuals doing on-call. And so this grew out of our culture of ownership at Intercom, where we built new teams, gave them a strong direction, strong mission. They built stuff. They want to continue to own this stuff, and it was kind of natural for them to go on call for the things. So out of hours on call just kind of grew ad hoc organizationally, and there was a bunch of inconsistencies with how we kind of implemented it. So we did have the systems engineering team who would take care of core shared infrastructure and public customer-facing infrastructure like load balancers, and they would practice good DevOps SRE practices. But then other teams would kind of be mixed on about it. But it was also there was completely critical stuff that we were doing in different parts of the company. Say our email delivery team. It's very important that they know that whether our emails are ending up on spam blacklists or whether their data stores are broken, because their software really delivers a lot of customer value. So we do kind of want to know when these things are broken. So, some of the problems. We were kind of like the proverbial frog in boiling water, but there was some things that kind of stood out. So we had too many individuals on call. So I'd seen how many people were on call for, say, a service like Amazon's S3 service. And the number of people we had on call was the same. And Intercom's a lot smaller than S3. So that didn't feel right. Also, the quality, we didn't practice the same practices between teams, and there's a bunch of consequences to this, but basically you could look at one team's set of alarms and they're okay, another team's set of alarms are very good, but there wasn't kind of shared understanding of what to do. Teams also kind of tolerated out-of-hour pages a lot. It was kind of normal to get paged out of hours, we weren't ruthless when it came to destroying the causes of these pages and digging into the problems there. So we kind of just shrug, oh well, it's just another thing broke. Fix the alarm and move on. Some other problems was that there was high variance of the on-call experience as a result and expectations within teams. So there was like if you joined one team and then moved on to another team, you would like some teams would take it very, very seriously. They would know exactly who's on call. They would, cover each other if they were going swimming or whatever. Whereas other teams were kind of more casual about it, largely because the frequency of out-of-hours pages might be a lot smaller, and it wasn't the same kind of level of criticality with their stuff. And that was kind of like a barrier to like moving around teams, really. We didn't have a simple way to like slot into a team, pick up some work, do on-call work for them, and know kind of what the expectations are. Also, it doesn't suit everybody to do on-call. Like when you're, it can be impactful to your family life. You can have other personal stuff that's going on. You might have like time-consuming hobbies, whatever, and we didn't want it to be the case that just because you happen to join one team that you would have to do 24/7 on-call, and you join another team and there was like very low expectations of on-call. This kind of didn't seem fair. It was actually a barrier to us being able to move engineers around teams and respond to kind of business needs. So we had a vague feeling of like a bunch of different problems that were kind of holding us back a little, and we weren't practicing kind of great continuous improvement consistently across teams. But the main problem was like on-call was eating our engineers, so it was impacting their lives, productivity, and general well-being. Getting paid out of hours all the time is like damaging personally and professionally. And while it's a lot of fun building stuff in a scrappy startup fashion and keeping things just about online, like Intercom was kind of transitioning out of that scrappy phase and moving towards building a sustainable, high-quality environment to work in. And so as such, our on-call setup was at odds with our ambitions. So we did something to try and fix it. So these slides make it look like super easy. This was like months of work, and we got like loads of stuff wrong. But what we did was we built a virtual team of volunteers for multiple teams. This is mostly like individual contributors, but we had like some guidance from, say, managers and that. First, we built a group to like think deeply about the problem at hand. Why do on-call at all? Like, can we just stop doing on-call? But that's not realistic because we have like product to sell to businesses around the world who want to talk to their customers at any time. But we wanted to figure like a shared way of doing this work that would like improve the quality of the work done by different teams. So we thought about things like what sort of metrics should we use for success? What are the kind of standards we want? We ended up building new standards for like what a good page looks like, or what a good alarm looks like. And so the alarm pretty much needs to be things like actionable. So there needs to be action taken by a human to do something. So in the case of, say, like a database failover, that doesn't necessarily require any action from a human to do something about it if the failover happened and like nothing else, everything went right afterwards. So we started reviewing our alarms of like, is there something actually to do here other than just noting that something went wrong? We also, there was an urgency required. So like, we kind of had a test of, is it worth getting somebody out of bed at 3 a.m. on Saturday morning for this alarm? And that question kind of focuses the mind a lot. There's a bunch of errors or issues that can happen where you can probably tolerate fixing a problem with high urgency in the next business day that happens. So a bunch of our alarms ended up getting thrown away as a result of not meeting the threshold of absolutely somebody needs to get out of bed to do this. We also brought in that every alarm has to have a run book. So because we're moving to this idea of a virtual team of volunteers from multiple teams, that meant that it wouldn't necessarily be somebody who was like intrinsically familiar with that system that just broke. So by having run books and by having attached to every single alarm, means we've got built up this repository of things to do when something breaks. We also invented new processes for us, so we built out a Terraform pipeline to control our alarms using Datadog, that are managed in Datadog and CloudWatch. And so this meant that we were able to follow like the GitHub flow of peer reviews, and this meant that we were having a shared understanding of what the reasons why alarms are being set. And just like a lot of the time our alarms were configured by people just going into Datadog, clicking through a bunch of things and moving on. Whereas whereas the GitHub flow forces a bit more collaboration, maybe some chats about what the right kind of thresholds are, and with the additional guidance we developed, it meant that like the quality alarms coming out the other side of this process were just kind of fundamentally better. So teams did a lot of work to move over their paging alarms to the new virtual team. Like progress was initially slow, so we were basically taking a big, long list of alarms which had been set up, kind of accrued over time, like in response to individual events, whatever, and we were reviewing them almost like one by one, and then only like reconfiguring them using the Terraform pipeline, and so this was kind of going a little bit slow, but so we ended up having to set like deadlines. We had like really good support from our engineering leadership, which was completely critical, as like we'd sold our story early on to like leadership and why we were doing it. So like the support for us allowed us to actually ship this and get the project done. But one thing that we did not want to do with this virtual team was like take ownership of services, and by that I mean like successful DevOps teams, or successful teams really need to have a strong connection between their operations and the services that they work on. But our take on this was we were comfortable with doing this in office hours, so teams would still do on-call for their stuff when they're in the office, which happens to be when most things break for us. So like we practice continuous deployment, so that's when code changes go out. It's also like we're a business to business kind of company, or at least that's what most of our customers do, and so our traffic kind of ramps up when Europe kind of starts waking up and kind of peaks around 4 o'clock Dublin time. So like we go through all the big kind of traffic ramps, as well as do the vast majority of our deployments during Dublin business hours. So by doing out of hours on call by a virtual team, but keeping the in hours on call in the team that's building the services, there was still like a strong attachment to what they were building. So we weren't completely breaking the kind of ownership and moving to like a more operations team model. We're also solving this problem for Dublin-based engineers, which is where we're doing the vast majority of our R&D at the time, but this kind of changed over time as our organization changed, but I'll talk a little bit about that later. So here's some more details about what we end up implementing. So outside of office hours, the on-call team gets all of the pages for every single service in Intercom. The product teams do on-call in the office. We pretty much decided on like 1 week of on-call for the virtual team. So we could, you can bike chat about this a lot, whether you separate out weekends from during the week or like when you start the shifts or whatever. But we figured that starting on Friday evening allows you to do the weekend, and then you finish at the Friday of the next week. So if you have like a bad week, you get the weekend to recover afterwards. But there's no perfect answer here. It's kind of like a big Indian, little Indian problem. We decided on a team of about 6 to 7 engineers. And so these people rotate in and out of the team. So by 6 or 7, it means that you're going on call once every 6 weeks or so for a week. So that's enough not to get stale, but also not enough to get burned out. And so we need a little bit of capacity to like cope with people doing human things like holidays and training and conferences and stuff. So this group of folks around the company move into the team, do like 3 or 4 of the shifts, and move on after about 6 months. Yeah, that's what I just said. So more details. So the virtual team needs a way to escalate. So they might get a runbook or get an alarm, follow a runbook, and kind of not make any progress, or maybe the runbook's broken, or it's something that's just like a problem that's bigger than we anticipated. And so the way we think about it is that the on-call engineer out of hours is a first responder. So they're just there to stop the bleeding, perform CPR, but they need to have a way to deal with problems that can't be resolved with like first aid and general knowledge and runbooks. So to take the stress of any kind of escalations, we invented a layer 2 escalation, or level 2 escalation, which is a rota of engineering managers and general leaders. And so the only path for escalation for the person who's on call is to that L2 escalation. And so the decisions we might make as a result are to like engage individual engineers or figure out like whether it's engaging further teams at all or like bringing in different teams to respond. But we want to take the stress away from the person who's taking the initial page. And so that engineering leader makes the call here. And so the obligation for the on-call engineer is just to triage, and if they can't make progress, escalate to the escalation manager. We also put in place so from this kind of system that we designed was the engineering leader then goes to the engineering manager, and while they're not actually strictly on call, it's kind of best effort, and then we'll escalate beyond that if needed. And so from the engineering manager, we'll go to engineers, whatever. So we remunerated for each shift, which is probably, if we didn't do it, it's probably illegal, but we did it regardless of pages. And we kind of also expected that people would be managing their time and rest appropriately. So if you're a member of the team, we kind of expect that you'll take adequate rest, and if you have a really bad night, that you wouldn't feel obliged to come into the office the next morning. But because we're a virtual team, it's difficult for us to kind of keep an eye and make sure that people are okay and rested and stuff like that. So we do kind of have a specific responsibility for when you're on the team to manage yourself well. So rest if you have to, but please do rest. So a bunch of things. So we had all these designs and kind of things. Things didn't go exactly as we expected. So one kind of thing was that the escalation process I just described ended up being pretty uncommon, and we ended up using kind of informal escalations. As in, like, a lot of the alarms go off, say, during the evening time, say like 9 o'clock Irish time, and whoever was around on Slack or whatever would just help out. And there would be engineers from San Francisco office who would help out, and we just kind of would make progress and would end up not using the formal escalation path very frequently. In fact, we would use the informal escalation and just collaborating with whoever happened to be online far more often than the formal escalation process, which we spent a lot of time designing for. We were kind of worried that teams would kind of throw the alarms over the wall, and that when stuff was firing, that we would have to hand back alarms and just generally need to work with them to resolve the problems that were causing the alarms. But in fact, the teams took really strong ownership of the issues that were created as a result of the alarms. So we didn't need the stick of like handing back alarms. The teams were like all over these paging alarms, and while sometimes we had like a little bit of dialogue as to the right response to an alarm going off, just this process of reviewing every single alarm that goes off and pushing it back to the team has worked really, really well. So like teams feel like an obligation to actually do something about a bunch of these things. It's almost like there's a social stigma to like paging members outside of your own team, whereas if you page your own team, you kind of tolerate it a bit more. I don't know. It's maybe like the difference between treating family versus friends or something like that. It seems to like tolerate more bad things locally as opposed to like sending issues off to another friend or another team. So a bunch of good things kind of happened. So we had the process of moving alarms over and then continuously reviewing the alarms as they fire, making tweaks and holding it to the bar of it needs to be actionable, it needs to get somebody out of bed. So overall, like the number of alarms firing just dropped, and so the number of like less than 10 per month, it's kind of gone back up a bit more to like 12 or so, but still these are really good numbers, and that's just on an average shift you'd have 2 or 3 alarms go off, and most of the time wouldn't be in the middle of the night, it'd be during say the evenings or whatever, and so this was a very positive outcome of the moving the alarms over to the team. the process of reviewing alarms and having to go through the GitHub flow, just like a lot of low-value ones got destroyed. So we had over time added a lot of alarms in response to like a specific event, and maybe it was at too low level, didn't describe or didn't reflect real customer problems, and so we just the fact of like reviewing all of your alarms and moving from one place to another just meant we dropped them. Due to our the kind of newer standards we had around what a good alarm looks like. And rotating people in and out really worked. In fact, one of the big problems I have with organizing this team and keeping it going is getting people out so the people who really want to join can come in. Additionally, like our San Francisco alarm engineers got involved. So at the same time, we were kind of building out R&D teams in San Francisco. We designed this purely for Dublin engineers and Dublin teams. But it seemed like a good opportunity that when a bunch of San Francisco engineers wanted to get involved, it made sense to just make this a distributed team and accommodate it. And it was a good way of like sharing knowledge and context between the two office locations. It did mean that over time we had to change the design of it to be not just Dublin out of office hours, but kind of more of a 24/7 operation to allow like the San Francisco-based teams to send alarms to it and not have like a weird setup of where if Dublin's in the office, then they have to do out of hours on call. So we ended up changing our setup so that the experience of engineers in San Francisco was identical to the experience of Dublin, and the team's experience of being able to send alarms over is identical. So that's a change that we made over time. That's that bit. So some more good things. We sent out communications to engineering, a bit like how things were going. That would get like really good feedback, but also was used to kind of set priorities for teams. We would like break down the number of alarms by team, and just being visible about this kind of stuff allowed teams to kind of set priorities and figure out, okay, we need to do something about the amount of alarms we're starting to strike. It was really nice to see that there was a visible link between like career progression and growth and being on this team. So the team was kind of a collaborative environment, kind of a lot of teaching, and you're learning about different parts of Intercom while you're in there. But it was like pretty valued, and like one of the things we do in Intercom is to celebrate yearly anniversaries. And like the membership of the team kind of comes up in the description of the work that they do, comes up in performance reviews, all this kind of stuff. So like culturally, it's really acknowledged that this work is really valuable. I was also like able to write a very satisfying systems engineering job advertisement, which is up there. And I think being able to say that like we have a systems engineering team that doesn't have mandatory out of hours on call, and it kind of opens up the role to kind of more diverse candidates. Like it's not so much like a we're hiring plug, but like I think it's an important part of the story, and kind of normalizes the systems engineering role, which very frequently is associated with kind of arduous on-call practices or out of hours expectations. So that was like personally very satisfying. I also got to write a cool blog post, and I give talks like this, which is great. So some takeaways. So I think challenging your on-call setup, like it's very powerful to kind of pull back and like assess the value that your on-call setup is giving both your customers as well as your teams and people. So like we pretty much were radical here. We could have evolved things. We could have just written standards for the teams themselves and had different ways of kind of enforcing this stuff. But we tried to solve a bunch of different problems at the same time, and we I guess got lucky and managed to build something that we're proud of, but has been pretty effective. So being radical here and not like allowed us to make significant progress. You have to understand your like SLAs, SLOs, and make sure you're not going to hurt your customers as you're improving your on-call setup. But ultimately, like we have to optimize for your teams. Like if there's automation you can write, do that instead of paging people. If there's no action to be taken, you should not take action instead of paging somebody. Just like putting the humans first is a good way of thinking about every single alarm you write. And the process of like opening an issue for every single alarm and having multiple people review the issue and make sure that the response is kind of good. This is like a forcing function for continuous improvement, and it buys you time and focus, and just like it means that you don't slip into a place where everything's on fire, where you're spending a lot of time doing operations work. And so this gets you back focus and agility. So finally, don't let on-call eat your engineers. Do everything you can to sustainably and responsibly make on-call an enjoyable, rewarding experience. Thank you for listening.